My name is Sarah, 28 years old, living in Atlanta, Georgia, with long, dark hair cascading in soft waves, warm brown eyes that conceal a storm of fear, guilt, and unyielding resolve, and a polished, elegant style that hides the weight of a choice that set my world ablaze. I'm the woman who stood up in a garden choked with the sickly sweet scent of 1,000 wilting white roses, under the horrified, accusing stares of 100 guests, and said, "I object," shattering my sister Jessica's dream wedding into 1,000,000 jagged shards. Her face, radiant in white lace like an angel carved from light, twisted into a mask of raw betrayal, her eyes searing me with a rage so fierce it still burns in my nightmares. My parents' glares struck like twin lightning bolts, their silent screams begging me to sit down, to stop destroying the day they'd poured their life savings into, a day meant to be perfect. But I couldn't stay silent. The man at the altar, Marcus, wasn't the charming prince who'd woven himself into our family's heart with honeyed words and calculated smiles. He was a monster, a con artist with a trail of broken lives across the country, his charm a veneer for a violent, predatory past that chilled my blood to ice. Jessica was his next target, her boundless trust and our parents' $50,000 wedding fund his prize. I ruined her wedding to save her life, and it cost me my family, my home, my place in the world, and nearly my sanity. When the truth clawed its way out, exposing Marcus's sinister secrets, I learned that love sometimes means becoming the villain, torching everything you hold dear to protect the one person you can't lose, even if they curse your name for it. Growing up in our modest Atlanta neighborhood where porches buzzed with laughter and houses huddled close under the heavy Georgia sun, Jessica was my North Star, my protector, my everything. 3 years older, she was the sister who made our small, weathered home feel like a sanctuary, despite the constant hum of struggle. Mom cleaned houses, her hands rough from bleach and long hours. Dad fixed cars, his fingers stained with grease, working late to keep us fed. Jessica's smile was a beacon, her laughter a melody that drowned out the clatter of bills piling up. At 7, she taught me to ride a bike, her hand gripping the seat as she ran beside me, breathless, her face tight with fear, not for herself, but for me, terrified I'd fall and scrape my knees. I can still hear her voice, steady despite her panting. "You've got this, Sarah. Just keep pedaling." When I wobbled and nearly crashed into a neighbor's fence, she caught me, her arms a safety net, her smile brighter than the summer sun. "You're tougher than you think," she said, brushing dirt off my knees, her eyes sparkling with pride. At 16, when my first love shattered my heart, leaving me sobbing in my room, she stayed up until 3 a.m., her voice a lifeline through the phone, ignoring her own college exam looming at dawn. "You're enough, Sarah," she said, her words soft but firm, stitching my broken pieces back together. "You'll always be enough." Her heart was spun gold, generous to a fault, believing in second, third, even fourth chances. That kindness was her gift, but also her curse. Friends saw her trust as a bank to empty, borrowing money for emergencies and vanishing, leaving her wounded but never bitter. She'd shrug, her smile unwavering, and say, "People make mistakes, they'll come around." I admired her faith, but it scared me. Her heart was a magnet for predators, and I swore to myself, even as a kid, that I'd protect it no matter the cost. When Marcus swept into her life, it felt like the universe was finally repaying her goodness. I met him at a family barbecue, the air thick with the smell of charcoal and jasmine. He was electric, a storm rolling in, tall, magnetic, with a smile that disarmed and eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul. He introduced himself as a senior consultant at a tech firm, always on the verge of a breakthrough, his voice smooth as velvet, his charm effortless. He knew Jessica's every dream, as if he'd studied her heart like a script. He gifted her a framed sketch of her childhood dog, Skipper, a golden retriever she'd mentioned once in passing, and I watched her eyes fill with tears as she hugged him, her voice trembling with gratitude. He quoted her favorite obscure French film, dissecting a scene with such insight that she glowed, feeling truly seen. "He gets me," she told me later, her face alight with a joy I'd never witnessed. To Mom, he was a rose gardening confidant, sharing tips on heirloom blooms with a passion that won her heart. He'd spend hours in her garden, kneeling beside her, discussing soil pH and pruning techniques. To Dad, he was a stock market savant, tossing around terms like emerging markets and dividend yields with an ease that left Dad, who'd always viewed Jessica's boyfriends with suspicion, nodding in rare approval. At family dinners, Marcus held court, his stories captivating, his laughter infectious, making each of us feel like the most fascinating person in the room. He remembered tiny details, Mom's favorite tea, Dad's old fishing stories, my love for jazz, and wove them into conversations with a precision that felt almost too perfect. He was a chameleon, adapting his colors to our desires, weaving himself into our family like a spider spinning a silken trap. We were all caught, dazzled by his perfection, but that perfection was the problem. A profile that flawless is a screaming red flag, and a cold, gnawing dread in my gut screamed that something was wrong. I wanted to trust him for Jessica's sake. She was happier than I'd ever seen, floating on a cloud of pure joy. But that dread clung to me like a shadow, whispering that Marcus was hiding something sinister. The cracks started small, jagged flaws in his polished facade, like hairline fractures in a mirror. At that same barbecue, he bragged about graduating from Stanford, dropping the name with practiced ease, as if it were his trump card. Uncle Ray, a proud Stanford alum with a faded cardinal sweatshirt, lit up, asking about a legendary economics professor, a campus icon who'd taught for decades. Marcus fumbled, his laugh tight and unconvincing, his eyes darting to me for a split second before he recovered. "Before my time," he said. But the dates he'd given for his attendance didn't add up. Uncle Ray shot me a questioning look over his beer, his brow furrowed, and a chill ran through me despite the summer heat. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, but the doubt lingered like a splinter under my skin. Weeks later, at a dinner party, Marcus spun a vivid, gripping tale of backpacking through Thailand, describing the scents of Bangkok street food, lemongrass, fish sauce, sizzling pork, so vividly I could taste it. The view from a Krabi beach painted in lush, poetic detail. It was mesmerizing, the kind of story that held everyone spellbound. But a month later, when I mentioned Thailand in passing, he casually said he'd never set foot in Asia. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "But you told that story about Krabi," I said, my voice light but probing. His smile was a blade, sharp and deflecting. "Just my wild imagination," he said, tapping his head with a wink, his eyes locking onto mine with a flicker of warning. Jessica laughed it off, annoyed at my scrutiny. "Stop playing detective, Sarah," she'd snap, nudging me in the ribs, her love for him blinding her. "You're interrogating the fun out of everything. He's a storyteller, that's all." But it wasn't just stories. His lies were small but sharp, piling up like shards of broken glass. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, and the more I watched him, the more his perfection felt like a carefully crafted mask. The unease became a scream when he proposed after just 6 months, a timeline so reckless it felt like a warning siren. He did it at a candlelit dinner with a dazzling diamond ring he claimed was his great-grandmother's heirloom, the stone catching the light like a star. Jessica was radiant, her joy infectious, tears streaming down her face as she said yes. I wanted to join in, to celebrate her happiness, but my stomach churned, my heart pounding with a fear I couldn't name. The wedding planning became Marcus's stage, a whirlwind of extravagance nothing like the intimate beach ceremony Jessica had always dreamed of. Barefoot, with close family, the sound of waves, and a simple white dress. Marcus pushed for a country club affair, a string quartet, a 5-course meal, a venue costing $50,000 with chandeliers and marble floors. "It's what you deserve," he'd say, his voice dripping with devotion, but his eyes were cold, calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. When Mom and Dad offered to cover half, scraping together their savings from years of grueling work, Marcus insisted on handling the finances. "Let me take this stress off your plate," he said, with that reassuring smile, directing funds to a joint wedding account. It sounded helpful, but it gave him unchecked control over their money, and the thought made my skin crawl. He began isolating Jessica, a subtle but deliberate tactic. He'd planned surprise, romantic getaways that clashed with her best friend's visits, weekends in Savannah or Charleston, always perfectly timed to keep her away from her support system. "I just want us to have time together," he'd say, his hand on hers, his smile too perfect. He never forbade her from seeing us, but his plans were always better, more romantic, more exciting, until her friends faded into the background. To everyone else, it was breathless devotion. To me, it was a cage tightening around her, and I was the only one who could see it. The mask slipped entirely 2 months before the wedding. We were at Jessica's apartment, finalizing wedding details, the table strewn with fabric swatches and seating charts. Marcus left his phone on the coffee table, and it lit up with a text from Vanessa. "She can't know. Transfer set for post-ceremony?" My blood turned to ice, the air in the room freezing around me. Before I could process it, Marcus snatched the phone with a speed that startled me, his charm replaced by a flash of raw animal panic. For a split second, I saw the real him, eyes wild, lips tight, a predator cornered. Then the mask snapped back, and he forced a laugh. "Just a car surprise for Jess," he said, but his voice was too smooth, his eyes too cold, and they locked onto mine with a flicker of menace that sent a shiver down my spine. I waited until he stepped out to get wine, then turned to Jessica, keeping my tone light. "Who's Vanessa?" Her reply was too quick, her eyes avoiding mine. "His financial planner, helping with our house." It sounded rehearsed, her voice brittle, like she was convincing herself. I pushed, mentioning the text's exact words, and her face hardened. "It's a surprise, Sarah. God, you're trying to ruin everything. He's buying me a car for a wedding gift. You'll spoil it." Her voice had a defensive edge, a crack in her certainty, but she turned away, refusing to hear more. I couldn't let it go. A financial planner doesn't send cryptic text about transfers happening after a wedding ceremony on a Sunday night. That look on Marcus's face wasn't about a spoiled gift. It was the terror of a man about to be caught. Later that night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced, replaying that moment. His eyes, the text. I felt like I was staring into a void, and the void was staring back. The dread followed me like a shadow, growing darker as the wedding approached. Marcus's charm became more aggressive, his control over Jessica tighter. At a family dinner a month before the wedding, I caught him watching me, his smile gone, his eyes cold and assessing, as if measuring how much of a threat I was. When I asked about his family in Oregon, hoping to trip him up, he deflected with a story about a distant cousin, but his voice was clipped, his fingers tightening around his glass. Later, as I helped Jessica clear plates, he cornered me in the kitchen, his voice low and laced with venom. "You're asking a lot of questions, Sarah," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Be careful. You wouldn't want to upset Jess before her big day." The threat was subtle, but it was there, a blade hidden in silk. My heart pounded, but I held his gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm just looking out for my sister," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "Keep looking, and you'll regret it." He walked away, leaving me trembling. The kitchen suddenly too small, too cold. I didn't tell Jessica. She'd dismiss it as me overreacting, but that moment cemented my resolve. Marcus wasn't just hiding something. He was dangerous, and I was running out of time to prove it. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. The rehearsal dinner was a masterclass in Marcus's manipulation, a performance so flawless it left me sick. His speech about soulmates was poetic, tear-jerking, drawing sniffles from mom and even dad who never cries. Guests raised glasses, enchanted, their laughter ringing through the venue, while I sat frozen, my stomach a pit of icy dread. I watched Marcus's hand on Jessica's, his smile too perfect, and felt like I was watching a predator toy with its prey. While everyone else slept, dreaming of the perfect day, I sat in my sterile hotel room, laptop open, heart pounding like a war drum. I had to know the truth. His company website was a ghost ship. Slick corporate jargon, meaningless mission statements, stock photos of smiling teams you could buy for $10. His LinkedIn was too perfect, a seamless career arc with vague, glowing recommendations that felt scripted, like lines from a play. He claimed his family was from a small town in Oregon, but a deep search for his name, his parents' names, yielded nothing. No property records, no school mentions, no social announcements. It was as if he didn't exist before 5 years ago. Then I remembered a slip-up months ago during a story about a bad business deal. Back when I was in Arizona, my partner, Alan, he'd corrected himself so fast I'd barely noticed, but it stuck with me, a splinter in my mind that wouldn't let go. My fingers flew across the keyboard, heart racing with grim purpose. I searched Marcus Kane, Arizona, con. Nothing. Then, on a desperate whim, I tried Alex, Arizona, con. A 4-year-old news blog from a Phoenix station appeared. Community warns of Casanova con artist after widow loses life savings. The article described Alex Richards, a charming man who'd wooed a wealthy widow, convinced her to liquidate her retirement fund for a once-in-a-lifetime investment, proposed with a dazzling ring, and vanished the day after she transferred the money to a shared account. The grainy photo was Marcus, same eyes, same predatory smile, just a different name. My hands shook so violently I could barely control the mouse. This wasn't a lie about his past. It was a pattern, a meticulously crafted scheme. I needed more. A reverse image search on their engagement photo, the one Jessica had posted proudly on Instagram, pulled up another article, this time from a small paper in Louisiana. Same man, same M.O., different name. Martin Peterson, who bankrupted a businesswoman after a whirlwind engagement. The details were chilling. Lavish wedding plans, a joint account, then disappearance. My stomach churned as I dug deeper, each click pulling me into a darker abyss. Then I found a secret Facebook group, Victims of the Wedding Con, a heartbreaking digital society of dozens of women, their stories mirroring Jessica's with terrifying precision. Whirlwind romance, lavish wedding, financial ruin. They posted photos, some called him Alex, some Martin, some Daniel, but it was always Marcus, his smile a constant in every frame. I read for hours, my horror growing with each post, my eyes burning from the screen's glow. One woman lost her home, used as collateral for his business venture. Another was drowning in debt from credit cards he'd had her open in her name. Sarah from Texas, a single mother, wrote that, when she got suspicious and asked about a strange bank transfer, his charm turned to ice, then to chilling threats. He said he'd make sure I'd regret asking questions, that my kids wouldn't be safe. Another post stopped my heart. He choked me when I found his fake passport. I thought I was going to die. Be careful. Marcus wasn't just a thief, he was a violent predator, and Jessica's wedding was in 10 hours. I sat there, trembling, my mind replaying the stories, the photos, the threats. I saw Jessica's trusting face, her radiant smile at the rehearsal dinner, and felt sick knowing she was walking into a trap that could destroy her, or worse. I scrolled through the Facebook group again, reading every post, memorizing the details, as if knowing more could make me sure of what I had to do. The women described his tactics, love bombing with gifts, isolating them from friends, controlling finances with a smile. One woman, Lisa from Ohio, wrote about finding a hidden phone in his car filled with texts to another woman about the plan. When she confronted him, he pinned her against a wall, his hand on her throat, his voice calm but deadly. "You don't want to ruin this, do you?" Another, Emily from Colorado, said he'd left her with $80,000 in debt, her credit destroyed, her family blaming her for trusting him. The stories piled up, each one a mirror of Jessica's life, and I felt like I was drowning in their pain. I imagined Jessica's name in that group, her photo among the victims, and my resolve hardened. I couldn't let her become another story, another warning. I stayed up all night, printing screenshots, compiling evidence, my hands shaking as I stuffed them into a folder. The weight of it felt like a bomb, and I was about to detonate it in the middle of her perfect day. The morning of the wedding was a surreal, technicolor nightmare. The sun shone obnoxiously, mocking my dread, as champagne flowed and bridesmaids giggled in their pastel dresses. I carried that folder of screenshots like a lead weight, its edges digging into my palms. I found Jessica in the bridal suite, a vision in white, her happiness so fragile it hurt to look at her. Her dress shimmered, her eyes sparkled, and she was surrounded by friends fussing over her veil. "Jess, I need to talk, just 1 minute," I said, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Her smile vanished, replaced by irritation, then anger. "Not this again, Sarah," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Can't you be happy for me? I don't want your conspiracy theories today. This is my day." I swallowed hard, my throat tight, and showed her the Phoenix article, my voice a strained whisper. "He's not Marcus, Jess. He's a con artist. He's dangerous." She shoved the folder away, tears of fury in her eyes, her voice rising to a scream. "You're jealous. You've never been able to stand my happiness, so you've cooked up this sick lie to ruin me. Get out." Her words were knives, slicing through our bond, her dismissal absolute, as she turned to the mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted her veil. Her bridesmaids stared, whispering, their eyes darting between us. I felt like I was sinking, the room closing in, but I couldn't back down. Desperate, I pulled Mom and Dad aside in the bustling hotel lobby, the air thick with the scent of lilies and anticipation. I showed them the article, my voice cracking with desperation. "Mom, Dad, Marcus is a con artist. I have proof." Dad scoffed, barely glancing at the screen, waving it away like a gnat. "A look-alike. Stop this nonsense, Sarah." Mom's voice was ice, her disappointment cutting deeper than any yell. "You're breaking Jessica's heart on her wedding day. Shame on you." Dad's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. "Go back to that garden, smile, and don't ruin this," he growled, his voice low and threatening, his finger jabbing at me. "You're embarrassing this family." They walked away, leaving me standing there, utterly alone, their trust in Marcus crushing my resolve like a boulder. I faced an impossible choice: stay silent and let Jessica marry a monster who could ruin or kill her, or speak and lose my family forever. I wandered the hotel, my mind a storm of doubt and fear. I replayed every moment with Marcus, every smile, every lie, searching for a way to be wrong. I thought of the women in the Facebook group, their faces haunting me. Sarah from Texas, Lisa from Ohio, Emily from Colorado. I imagined Jessica among them, her life in ruins, and my heart clenched. I saw Marcus's face in the kitchen, his veiled threat echoing, "You'll regret it." The folder in my hands felt heavier with each step, the evidence inside a ticking bomb. I tried one last time to reach Jessica, catching her alone in a hallway as she adjusted her earrings. "Jess, please, just look at this," I begged, holding out the folder. She spun on me, her eyes blazing. "You're obsessed, Sarah. You're trying to destroy my life because you can't handle me being happy. I don't want you here. Leave." Her words hit like a slap, her voice echoing in the empty hallway. A passing guest stared, and I felt the weight of judgment pressing down. I walked back to the garden, my heart a cold stone in my chest, knowing what I had to do. Saving Jessica was more important than her happiness in this one fake moment. I took my place at the front, my silk dress clinging to my skin, the folder tucked under my arm like a weapon. The ceremony began, the garden blooming with roses under a cruelly bright sun, the air thick with humidity and anticipation. Jessica glided down the aisle on Dad's arm, her smile radiant, unaware of the trap closing around her. Marcus stood at the altar, his gaze too perfect, a predator's mask, his suit pristine, his smile a lie. The officiant's voice rang out, calm and practiced. If anyone objects, speak now or forever hold your peace. My heart thundered, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, my pulse so loud I thought it would drown out the world. I stood, my silk dress rustling like dead leaves in the stunned silence, the sound unnaturally loud. "I object," I said, my voice cutting through the crowd like a gunshot. Gasps erupted, a collective wave of shock rippling through the garden. The string quartet screeched to a halt, one violin squeaking in protest. Jessica's face crumpled, her voice a furious hiss. "What are you doing? Sit down!" Her eyes were wild, her hands clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. Marcus's smile vanished, replaced by a glare that could kill, his eyes glinting with cold, predatory fury. "There's no mistake," I said, holding up my phone, my hands trembling but my voice steady, ringing with a clarity I didn't know I possessed. "His name isn't Marcus Kane. In Phoenix, he's Alex Richards. In Louisiana, Martin Peterson. He's a con artist who marries women, steals their money, and vanishes. He's done this to dozens." The crowd erupted in frantic whispers, guests leaning forward, phones already out recording the chaos. Jessica sobbed, her makeup streaking, her voice breaking. "You're lying! You're sick! You're making this all up!" Marcus took a menacing step toward me, his voice a low growl, barely audible over the murmurs. "You jealous little brat, ruining your sister's day." I didn't flinch, my fear buried under a surge of defiance. "Am I, Alex?" I shot back, my voice dripping with contempt. "What about Vanessa, your financial planner, waiting for our parents' $50,000 to hit your account?" I held up a photo from the Facebook group, my hand steady despite my racing heart. "This is Lisa from Ohio. You took her savings. Sarah from Texas, her home. You choked her when she found your fake passport." Marcus lunged for my phone, a feral snarl twisting his face, his arm raised as if to strike me. His best man grabbed him, shock in his eyes, as guests screamed, chairs scraping the ground. Dad stormed forward, his face purple with rage, pointing at me like I was a criminal. "You're humiliating us," he roared, his voice echoing across the garden. "Sit down, Sarah, or I swear." Jessica collapsed into a chair, sobbing, her veil slipping, her voice a broken wail. "I hate you, Sarah. You've ruined my life." I held my ground, tears streaming down my face, my voice cracking but unyielding. "I'd rather you hate me than let him destroy you," I cried, showing the crowd another victim's photo, my hands shaking. "He's a monster, Jess. He's hurt people, physically. He's threatened to kill them." Chaos exploded, guests shouting, Mom wailing, her sobs loud and hysterical, the garden a battlefield of shock and betrayal. Marcus broke free from his best man's grip and bolted, shoving past a waiter, vanishing into the crowd, as Jessica stood frozen at the altar, her dreams shattered, her world in ruins. The fallout was a living nightmare, a descent into a hell I hadn't imagined possible. In the pandemonium, Marcus slipped away before anyone thought to call the police, leaving behind a wake of confusion and rage. All the fury, shame, and betrayal that should have been aimed at him was turned on me, a tidal wave of blame that drowned me. Dad banned me from our family home, his voice cold as stone, his eyes refusing to meet mine. "You're no longer our daughter. Get out." Mom's tears carried venom, her voice trembling with a mix of grief and disgust. "You chose the cruelest way to hurt Jessica. On her wedding day, Sarah, we're done with you." Their words were a guillotine, severing me from the only home I'd ever known. Jessica was the worst. In the empty, flower-strewn garden, now a battlefield littered with abandoned champagne flutes and crumpled napkins, she faced me, her eyes hollow with a bone-deep hate that chilled me to my core. "I'll never forgive you," she hissed, each word a shard of ice stabbing into my heart. "You didn't save me. You destroyed the only happiness I've ever had. I hope you're proud. I never want to see you again." Her voice broke, but her gaze was unyielding, a wall of rage and pain I couldn't breach. I stood there, my silk dress stained with tears, the folder of evidence useless in my hands, as she walked away, her white dress trailing like a ghost. I lost my family in one afternoon, the bond I cherished since childhood reduced to ash. The weeks that followed were the loneliest, most agonizing of my life. I moved into a friend's cramped apartment, sleeping on her lumpy couch, feeling like an intruder in her world. My phone was silent, my family gone, their numbers blocked, my texts unanswered. Doubt poisoned my nights, seeping into my thoughts like a toxin. Had I misread it all? Was I the monster who'd ruined Jessica's life for nothing? The evidence felt flimsy in the face of their hatred, my certainty crumbling under the weight of their rejection. The family's wrath spilled online, a public execution that cut deeper than I thought possible. Cousins posted about my jealous betrayal, their words sharp and mocking. Sarah couldn't handle Jess being happy, so she blew it all up. Aunts shared vague rants about disloyal daughters, their posts racking up likes from family friends I'd known since childhood. Neighbors whispered when I passed, their eyes cold, their voices hushed but cutting. "That's the girl who ruined her sister's wedding," I overheard at the grocery store, the words slicing through me. Old friends unfollowed me on social media, their silence louder than any argument. The community I'd grown up in, the one that had cheered at my school plays and brought casseroles when Grandma died, turned its back. I was a pariah, an outcast in the place I'd called home. I barely slept, my mind replaying that moment in the garden. Jessica's screams, Marcus's snarl, Dad's rage. Nightmares plagued me, vivid and relentless. Marcus's hand on my throat, Jessica's face dissolving into tears, the crowd's eyes burning into me. I'd wake gasping, my heart racing, the folder of screenshots on the coffee table a cruel reminder of my choice. I questioned my sanity, my resolve fraying at the edges, the silence from my family a deafening void that threatened to swallow me whole. 2 months later, my phone rang, an unknown number. My heart leaped, hoping against hope it was Jessica. "This is Detective Miller, Financial Crimes Unit," a calm, steady voice said. "Am I speaking to Sarah?" I froze, my breath catching. "We have Marcus Kane, real name Richard Thomas, in custody, caught at the airport trying to board a flight to Brazil with a fake passport and $80,000 in cash." My heart stopped, the air sucked from the room. My outburst at the wedding had sparked a flood of victim reports, building a case against a career criminal with 15 aliases across 6 states. "You saved your sister from financial ruin," the detective said, her voice warm but matter-of-fact, "and likely worse. He's assaulted victims who got too close, choked one in Ohio, threatened another with a knife in Texas. We've got a mountain of evidence thanks in large part to you." Relief crashed over me, a tidal wave of validation so powerful it nearly knocked me over. I dropped onto the edge of my friend's coffee table, sobbing, my hands shaking as I clutched the phone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't jealous. I was right. But the relief was bittersweet, stained by the family I'd lost, the community that had shunned me, the nights I'd spent doubting my own mind. The detective explained that Marcus, Richard Thomas, had conned dozens of women, leaving some homeless, others terrorized. One victim, a nurse in Nevada, had found a hidden bank account and confronted him. He'd slammed her against a wall, his hand on her throat, whispering threats until she backed down. Another, a teacher in Florida, had received anonymous letters warning her to stop asking questions after she noticed money missing. My public stand had broken the dam, giving other victims the courage to come forward. their stories piling up like bricks in a wall that would keep him behind bars. An hour later, Mom called, her voice thick with sobs, barely coherent. "Sarah, oh honey, we were so wrong," she cried. "The police came to the house. They showed us everything, his record, the other women, the violence. We were so blind. We failed you." I drove to their house, my hands trembling on the wheel, my heart a tangled knot of hope and pain. When I walked in, the anger was gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating blanket of shame and regret. Mom hugged me, her sobs shaking her small frame, her hands clutching me like I might disappear. Dad, who never cries, pulled me into a hug, his voice cracking as he whispered into my hair, "I should have listened. You were protecting her, and I called you a disgrace. I'm so sorry, Sarah." His tears wet my cheek, a rare vulnerability that broke my heart all over again. They sat me down, their faces pale, and told me what the police had shared. Richard Thomas was a career criminal, a master manipulator who targeted women like Jessica, kind, trusting, with families willing to invest in their happiness. He drained bank accounts, maxed out credit cards, and left a trail of devastation. Some victims had faced physical threats. One woman in Texas had woken to a knife on her pillow after asking about a bank transfer. My outburst had saved Jessica from financial ruin and potential harm, but the cost was a wound that still bled. Jessica was the hardest. For weeks, she ignored my texts, my calls, my voicemails, grappling with a devastating double betrayal. The man she loved was a lie, and her family had chosen him over me. She mourned the future she'd planned, the man who never existed, while wrestling with her own misjudgment. I sent her messages every day, simple ones. "I love you, Jess. I'm here when you're ready." But the silence was crushing. I drove by our childhood home, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but the curtains were always drawn, the house a fortress against me. I learned from Mom that Jessica was seeing a therapist, trying to untangle the pain of losing her dream and the shame of trusting a monster. I felt helpless, my guilt a constant ache, but I kept reaching out, refusing to give up on her. One night, 2 months after the wedding, there was a quiet, hesitant knock on my friend's apartment door. I opened it, and there was Jessica, her face gaunt, her eyes red-rimmed but clear, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked smaller, as if the grief had carved pieces of her away, but her gaze was steady, no longer clouded by hate. She didn't speak, just stepped forward and hugged me, a fierce, desperate embrace that felt like coming home. We stood in the doorway, crying, our tears mingling as we held each other, the weight of the past months pouring out. We cried for the wedding that became a crime scene, for the trust we'd lost, for the sisterhood we were rebuilding, scarred but unbroken. We sat on the couch, the room lit only by a dim lamp, and she finally spoke, her voice raw. "You saved me," she whispered, her hands clutching a mug of tea I'd made her. "And I hated you for it. I thought you were jealous, that you wanted to take away my happiness. But you saw what I couldn't." I reached for her hand, my own tears falling. "I'm just glad you're safe," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't let him hurt you, Jess. Not you." She squeezed my hand, her eyes searching mine. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, the memory of that night in the hotel room flooding back. "I didn't, not for sure. But his perfection was a mask, and I couldn't let you marry a ghost. I love you too much." We talked for hours, unraveling the pain, the betrayal, the guilt. She told me about the moments she'd ignored, his insistence on controlling the wedding budget, his vague answers about his past, the way he'd get angry when she asked about his family. She chalked it up to stress, to love, but now she saw the red flags she'd missed. "I was so blind," she said, her voice breaking, "and I blamed you for seeing the truth." I pulled her into another hug, my heart aching but full. "You're not blind, Jess. You're kind, and that's why I had to protect you. Our bond isn't the same as it was before, It's less naive, marked by the scars of that day, but it's stronger, like a bone broken and healed tougher in the mended place. I learned that love sometimes means being the villain, burning bridges to save someone, even when they curse your name. I learned to trust my gut, even when the world calls me crazy, when my family turns their back, when my community shuns me. I'd do it again to protect Jessica, no matter the cost. My home, my reputation, my peace. The nightmares still come sometimes, Marcus's snarl flashing in the dark, but they're quieter now, drowned out by the memory of Jessica's hug, her whispered thank you. If you've ever faced an impossible choice, risking everything for someone you love, comment your story below. It matters. Subscribe to join me in uncovering truths worth fighting for, because sometimes saving someone means setting your world on fire.